Hello, my name is Jeff Gemiolo, and today I'd like to talk about life is like a video game. As much as that sounds like a cute saying, it actually pretty much is a good cute saying, but life is actually a very interesting thing because it's actually somewhat cruel in a way, in that it gives you the test before it gives you the lesson. So literally, if you think about it, you look at a small child. Your mother and father can tell you to not put your hand on on something hot that's on fire. You're not gonna really listen, and until you get burnt, and then it's like, okay, don't do that. So you failed the test because you got burnt, and then after that, when you see it, you're gonna sit there and say, I remember the test. Nope, I don't want to do that. As I said, it's actually a little funny thing because people kind of forget that sometimes, and you can study all day but usually get the test before you get the lesson. And the good news usually with that is when you get the test, you get the lesson, you get the retest again, but we'll get to that soon enough. There was actually a pretty funny movie. So if you think about life, life is just, let's just say, one lifetime of yours. However, because your soul is learning, it's not just your learning, your soul is learning. We just keep going on the same cycle over and over until we complete it or we change what we're doing. Example is if you look at the movie Little Nicky. It's about the devil had a child, and the child had to come to Earth for some reason. And what's funny about the part that I enjoyed was he would come to Earth and immediately get hit by a car or something would happen on Earth. And his answer was, well, I need to pull a mulligan on that because I don't know, we don't have death down here, kind of thing. We can't die in hell, and that's true. It's the same thing with your soul. Your soul can't really die that way. So just because on Earth you go over and you die, it means you get recycled back and you get to do it again. So it's kind of like Groundhog's Day too. Every day, same thing. But you make different choices throughout the mechanism. Because realistically, what the whole aspect of Little Nicky that was interesting is you don't know what you don't know. Just like if you think about you're playing Super Mario Brothers or Mario Brothers, and you're bouncing around. If it's the first time, you don't know any of this, so you're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna do whatever. The good news is you die. Why? Because now, in your death, it's as traumatic as that is. It does sit there and say, well, I don't want to do that again. And it forces you to pick a different choice. Now, what if I do this instead? What if I do that instead? And throughout life, you slowly get past these little hurdles in life. Hence the reason why life is kind of like a video game, because when you're young, you may just get burnt. As an adult, if you don't listen to that, you could die in a fire. There's a lot of things that could happen. But the baby in fire was just an interesting example because it usually happens when they're young. Sometimes people, a little kid will actually dump hot water on themselves accidentally, maybe a cup of coffee or something that's hot. That's why most people can relate to it, because most people it actually happened to them. I'm pretty sure I burnt myself when I was a kid because that's how you learn not to touch hot stuff. Back to this Mario thing. So you're kind of playing this game, so you're going around circles and circles, you keep dying, and just like the video game mentality, you're working your way through the system, learning new skills. And that's really what we're doing in life too, is you're learning new skills. Some not so good skills, some good skills. Depends, some people pick up, how to steal things. Not necessarily a good skill unless you need it. But either way, you kind of work out through life, and you kind of make these decisions. And the goal, I guess, is your soul has, let's for sake of argument say there's 35 check boxes that they have to complete before, while they're here in the Earth School of learning things. So your soul has to learn these 35 things, or otherwise it keeps repeating it. So what you'll do is you'll actually go over, and in this lifetime, you'll be trying to learn 5 or 4 things. You get 3 of them, that's fine. But what usually happens is once you complete one, you hit what they call you basically you get tested on that to make sure that you learned it, and either passed or you failed. If you failed it, okay, you get hit with a little bit of karma, or I should say, if you pass it, you get hit with karma too, but it's good karma. It's dharma. If you fail it, you basically get karma to make you remember that decision that was bad, to negatively reinforce that was bad. And remember, this is for your soul. So your soul is remembering this. So what happens at that point is next time you go around and you get retested, and we'll see what happens. Let's for sake of argument say you fail it again. We go through some more deeper karma at this point, because you need to, you're not listening. Okay, then it gives you another retest, and then you pass it. Okay, whew. Okay, and what'll happen is not too far after that, you'll super secretly get another retest to make sure you learned your lesson. It was not a fluke. And of course, you learned your lesson. It's like, oh no, I don't want that to happen again. And you pass it again. It's like, okay, so really, you don't really ever get that test again, or you automatically kind of pass it. For the sake of argument, let's call that a game save point. In games, when you get past a certain point, it's a save point where if you die at this point, you go back to here instead of the beginning. And that's what a save point is. So in your spiritual journey, I guess, of your soul, that happens also. So at this point, you don't have to repeat those lessons anymore because you kind of already learned them. They're already ingrained in you, in your soul. Periodically, you'll be tested, and if you fail it, you'll have to relearn it again. But it's actually quite rare. For most people, it's actually quite rare. But that's where the save points come in, and the save point just brings you right back to where you were. So you don't have to retest all that. Now, what's odd about it is, actually, if you die in this lifetime, you come back to the next, you go back to your last save point. And that's where that becomes important. So you reincarnate back to your last save point, where you still have to learn these other lessons, and you keep going. And eventually, when you got all 35, say, of your lessons checked off, okay, you kind of pass. And when you end the game, there's only one or two ways to end the game. Either you stop playing, you can stop playing, which means I just not going to do anything. Or B, stop playing also means taking your own life. You're essentially putting yourself into a loop stuck because you're not doing anything. Either way, God's not real thrilled with that. But the way to win the game actually is to get all your checkboxes. When you get all your checkboxes, at that point, you kind of win. You get your reward. Like in Mario, you get the princess, I guess. That's what happens. And it's no different really in life. It's just what the reward is. It could be peace and quiet in your life. It could be any number of things. However, life is like a video game when you realistically think about it. It sounds kind of weird to think about, but it's not all that weird. Then you're going to ask yourself, okay, well, what's happened? After you quote win the game, what happens? At that point, you have to remember you're not in Earth School anymore, the Earth School. So you've already learned. So in a way, you kind of are a creator of your own world at that point, because usually when you get through all those tests, you're a pretty decent soul. You're respectful of others. You are kind to others. You're service to others. You're not a real selfish person, and you're a good creator. So usually the next step after that is you get the ability to create your own world. And the Lord usually gives you that and say, hey, let's go see how you do. I know, sounds crazy, but that's usually what happens. Now, there's some that don't make it out of the Earth School. Some people just literally, they do the same thing they did in past lives, and they keep going over, so they're really not learning anything. And I don't know if there's a 3 strikes you're out, or 5 strikes you're out, or 100 strikes you're out. Usually the Lord gives you pretty much a lot of warning before, He says you're not trainable as a soul. And what happens is you go through the wood chipper. Your soul gets destroyed, gets broken apart and recombined into parts of other souls. So essentially rebuild different souls with different recipe. You can think of it that way. So for the most part, it's really not a good place to be. Is to be in defiance like that. Realistically, what I've always found, when I found this, it was actually a relief when I found this out, because it makes a lot of sense. Because when you start analyzing your life and you look at it and say, man, there's some messed up stuff that's happened in my life, and it's kind of like it's like a pattern. It'll happen, it'll stop, it happen again. So you kind of learn about these patterns. Just like in video games, there's patterns. There's also patterns in life. There has to be. Just like what people don't want to talk about is there's a lot of people's stories are the same or similar. Imagine imagine the Lord wants to teach 1 million people something. So they put them all on the same curriculum. Difference is you don't want them all to be the same, because that wouldn't be good. So there's slight variations in each quote story. And each one of those stories might be slightly different. It might be a mother that's an alcoholic, or a father, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So there's always a variation in there, a couple of different varieties, different scripts, so to speak. But they really don't deviate far from the main line. And at that point, so therefore, your entire class, so to speak, is learning at the same time. Oddly enough, almost everyone who's tormenting you right now is actually part of your soul group. They're soulmates of yours, unfortunately. That's why there's a very big romance about soulmates and all that. I don't. As I said, that's just a label. I look at it as it's a soul group. There's about say 1,000, maybe 10,000 souls that you interact with in your entire training. And sometimes they're the friends, sometimes they're enemies, sometimes they're whatever. Very rarely do they come and go. But for the entire life of your training and their training, you'll pretty much always be there. It's just what capacity are you gonna be there? Am I supposed to be the mean person this time because I need to learn to be mean? Or need to put my foot down, kind of thing. So that's what's it's all about, is you're all learning together and you all play different roles. Yeah, there was a Marvel movie recently, Every Which Way All But Once, or something like that. That was actually, if you watch that movie, that's actually about the multiverse. That's actually not that far off. I told you, they've been giving us hints. You just haven't been paying attention. And maybe you should. There's a lot of truth to that. If you pay attention to it, there's a lot of people in a lot of different roles in different universes. And there's no difference in ours. The person that hates me the most is probably my lover in the next one, so, in a different one. It's just, that's kind of how it works. It's just weird. It's because your soul actually wants to experience a lot of things. So instead of spending 1 billion years to go do that, you'll do these little, missions, so to speak, where your soul will go down here and do this, do that, and do that. But they're the same people. So you kind of got all these weird contracts going on. But as I said, it's interesting. If you want, you should probably do more research on that and soul contracts. But literally, I like the analogy of it being a video game. I don't like the cheat code aspect of it because actually, technically, in a way, you can cheat in the game. They call that, magic or black magic. You could cheat, you can do spells, you can do whatever you want to cheat all that. But realistically, you're not learning anything. And that's what's really oddly funny, is it's kind of like when you play, Super Mario Bros. You can press the up button 6 times and down once or whatever, and it does something. You hover like a hovercraft or whatever. I go, yeah, but it doesn't help you when something else happens because you didn't develop the skill, the skills needed for that. I'm a computer programmer, so I see that all the time where people kind of cheat all the time. They'll grab something, they'll grab a lot of stuff off of Google, and they're not really learning anything. And it's like, okay, so when you have to solve a different problem, what's your answer? Oh, I have to go back to Google, or I have to go back and figure something else out. But you're not really figuring anything out. You're just going copying some other person's stuff. That's it. Oddly enough, I was looking up the phrase. I was looking up actually the the biblical reference to teaching a man to fish. If you give a man a fish for a day, he'll eat for a day, but if you teach him to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. That actually is not in the Bible. It actually is it's a Chinese proverb. I'm like, I didn't ever even realize that. Now I do. But there's actually a lot of truth to that also. In that it's everyone's job to teach everyone else something. And it's also our job to learn. So it's our job to be a teacher and a student. So I try to do my best in life to always teach people something. Also, I live by the fact that I like to leave the world in a better place than I originally came to it. That's always a favorite too. Example is I'll be on a walk with the dog and we'll see some trash on the ground. And the rule of thumb is if she sniffs it, I have to pick it up. If she doesn't sniff it, I'm in the clear. And the logic is if she sniffed it, she touched it, which means I have to make the world a better place. I have to pick it up and take it to a garbage can when we get near one. Sounds crazy, but it's probably been there for a week or a month. But the point of the matter is making the world a better place. Because every time you make the world a better place, it actually improves your world. You just don't know it. Because we are all connected together. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you for listening and have a great day.